Welcome to Language Swap, everyone, a fun way to learn English. We are so excited to have you join us today.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sally. And Alex, I want to tell you about something that happened in a meeting last week.
Okay, tell me, was it as dramatic as your face just made it sound?
Not dramatic exactly, but really interesting. Two people on my team completely disagreed about a decision, and somehow the whole conversation stayed calm, respectful, and actually productive.
That's honestly kind of rare. A lot of disagreements either turn into full arguments or everyone just avoids the topic completely to keep the peace.
Exactly. And afterward, I found myself thinking about what made that conversation work so well, and it really came down to specific language they both used. Neither of them backed down from their actual position, but somehow nobody left the room feeling attacked or dismissed either.
That's exactly what today's episode is about. How to disagree without fighting, because disagreement itself isn't the problem. It's actually healthy and necessary. The problem is usually how we express it, and honestly, most of us were never really taught how to do that well.
And here's something we want to leave you with today too. Beyond just the vocabulary, disagreement done well isn't about winning. It's about understanding each other better, even when you don't end up agreeing.
So today we're covering how to express disagreement respectfully, how to receive disagreement without getting defensive, and how to actually move a conversation forward instead of getting stuck in conflict.
Let's start with the foundation, because there's one mindset shift that changes everything about how disagreement feels before we even get into the actual phrases.
Disagreeing with someone's idea is not the same as disagreeing with them as a person. That distinction sounds obvious, but so many arguments happen because people forget it in the heat of the moment.
That's such an important starting point. And English actually has really specific vocabulary that helps you separate the idea from the person if you know how to use it intentionally.
Let's start with softening openers, because how you begin a disagreement sets the tone for absolutely everything that follows in the conversation.
I see where you're coming from, but this phrase does something really powerful. It validates the other person's perspective before you introduce your own. I see where you're coming from, but I think there's another angle here. It's such a respectful opener because it proves you actually listened before responding.
Instead of just waiting for your turn to talk, which honestly is what a lot of us do in disagreements without even realizing it.
I hear you, and we touched on this one in an earlier episode, but it's essential here too. I hear you, and I actually see it a little differently. Notice it's and, not but. That small shift feels less combative almost immediately.
That's such a subtle but real difference, but can feel like it's canceling out what the person just said, and feels like you're adding to the conversation instead of erasing their point completely.
That's a fair point. However, acknowledges the validity of what someone said before introducing a different view. That's a fair point. However, I think we're missing something important here.
I'm not sure I fully agree. Softer than a flat, I disagree, and it opens space for discussion rather than shutting things down immediately. I'm not sure I fully agree. Can I share why?
Asking, "Can I share why?" is such a small addition, but it turns a statement into an invitation. It respects that the other person gets to respond, not just receive your opinion passively.
Now let's talk about actually stating your disagreement clearly, because softening it too much can sometimes make your actual point unclear or lost entirely.
I'd push back on that. We mentioned this before, and it's direct but respectful. It engages with the idea, not the person. I'd push back on that a little. Here's why.
I see it differently. Simple, clean, non-aggressive. It doesn't say the other person is wrong, just that your perspective is different from theirs. I see it differently. Let me explain my thinking.
From where I'm sitting. A great way to frame your opinion as perspective rather than absolute truth. From where I'm sitting, this looks like it could cause problems down the line.
In my experience, this grounds your disagreement in something concrete rather than just abstract opinion. In my experience, that approach tends to create more confusion than clarity.
I want to offer a different perspective. Very professional, very clear. It signals you're about to disagree without any aggression in the framing at all. I want to offer a different perspective on this.
These phrases all do the same essential job. They let you be honest and direct about disagreeing without making the other person feel attacked in the process.
Now, Here's a category that's honestly just as important: how to receive disagreement gracefully when someone pushes back on your own idea.
Because how you respond to disagreement often matters even more than how you initiate it. This is where a lot of conversations either stay healthy or completely fall apart.
That's a good point. Let me think about that. Instead of immediately defending your position, this phrase creates space to actually consider what was said. That's a good point. Let me think about that for a second.
I hadn't thought about it that way. Genuinely humble, and it shows real openness rather than defensiveness. I hadn't thought about it that way. Tell me more about your thinking.
Help me understand. Instead of assuming the other person is wrong, this invites clarification. Help me understand what's making you see it that way. Curious, not combative at all.
I love that phrase because it comes from a place of genuine curiosity rather than defense. It says, I want to understand you instead of prove yourself to me.
You might be right. Such a simple phrase, but honestly, it takes real maturity to say it in the middle of a disagreement. You might be right. I need to think about this more.
I can see the logic in that, acknowledges the reasoning behind someone's position. Even if you're not fully convinced yet, I can see the logic in that, even if I'm still not totally sure.
I want to share something here. Early in my career, I used to treat every disagreement like a debate I had to win. Someone would push back, and my whole body would just tense up, ready to defend.
I think a lot of people relate to that, honestly, myself included at times.
And then a mentor told me something that changed how I approach this completely. She said, the goal isn't to be right. The goal is to get to what's true together. That reframed everything for me.
That's such a powerful shift. Disagreement stops being a competition and starts being a shared search for the best answer, whatever that turns out to be.
Exactly. And once I started actually receiving disagreement that way, even the hardest conversations started feeling less threatening and more like genuine collaboration.
Now, let's talk about moving a conversation forward when you genuinely don't agree. Because sometimes disagreement doesn't resolve neatly, and honestly, that's okay too.
Let's agree to disagree. A classic phrase for genuinely respecting that two people see something differently without needing a clear winner. We're clearly not going to agree on this. Let's just agree to disagree.
I really love this phrase because it protects the relationship even when the disagreement itself doesn't get resolved. Not every conversation needs a definitive winner at the end.
Let's find some middle ground. Actively working toward a compromise both people can accept. Maybe we can find some middle ground here that works for both of us.
What would it take for us to agree on this? A collaborative question that shifts the conversation from opposing sides to working together on a shared problem. Very powerful reframe in the moment.
Let's circle back to this. When emotions are running high, sometimes the healthiest thing is pausing the conversation entirely. This is getting heated. Let's circle back to this tomorrow with fresh eyes.
That's such a mature phrase. It's not avoiding the conversation, it's just recognizing that timing genuinely matters for having it productively and calmly.
We both want the same outcome, we just see different paths there. This phrase reframes disagreement as two people working toward a shared goal rather than opponents facing off.
Incredibly useful in both work and personal relationships. Honestly, one of my favorite phrases from this whole episode.
I want to pause here because I think this is genuinely the heart of the whole episode. Most disagreements aren't actually about wanting different outcomes. They're about seeing different paths to the same outcome, which is a completely different thing once you really sit with it.
That's such a profound point. Honestly, if you can find the shared goal underneath the disagreement, the whole conversation changes completely. It stops being a fight and starts being a collaboration.
And that's the thing we really want people to walk away with today. Disagreement isn't the enemy of good relationships. Avoiding disagreement or expressing it poorly is what actually damages relationships over time.
When you disagree well with respect and curiosity, it can actually bring people closer together. It shows you care enough to be honest, and you respect them enough to do it thoughtfully, instead of just going along to avoid tension.
That's such a beautiful reframe, honestly. Healthy disagreement as an act of respect, not an act of conflict at all.
I think that's genuinely one of the most valuable things language can do for us. Give us the tools to be honest without being hurtful, and disagree without disconnecting from someone we genuinely care about.
Whether it's with a coworker, a friend, or a family member, the way you disagree really does shape the relationship far more than the disagreement itself ever does.
I want to add one more area before we wrap up, because it's become so relevant in modern life. How do you disagree respectfully over text or email, where tone is so much harder to read?
That's such a good addition, because written disagreement can go wrong so easily. Without tone of voice or facial expressions, a perfectly reasonable message can come across as cold or harsh.
Just to add another perspective, a gentle written opener that doesn't sound confrontational at all. Just to add another perspective here, I think we might want to consider the timeline too.
Totally hear you on this, and one thing I'd add is works really well in written form because it explicitly shows agreement before introducing a different point.
Curious what you think about this angle. Frames your disagreement as a genuine question rather than a correction, which reads so much softer in text.
One thing I always try to do in emails specifically is read my message back and ask myself, would this feel okay if someone sent it to me? That one habit has saved me from a lot of miscommunication over the years.
That's such a practical tip. It's easy to forget that the person reading your message can't hear your actual tone, so the words have to carry all of that warmth on their own.
Let's also walk through a quick example to make all of this feel more real. Imagine a coworker suggests a plan you genuinely think has a problem.
The unhelpful version might sound like, "That won't work. We tried that before, and it failed direct, maybe even accurate, but it shuts the conversation down immediately."
The better version might be, I see where you're coming from, and I remember we tried something similar before. Can we talk through what might be different this time? Same core concern, completely different emotional impact.
That example really shows it. The information is almost identical, but one version invites a conversation, and the other one ends it before it even starts.
Exactly, and that's really the whole point of everything we've covered today. Disagreement isn't about softening your actual opinion until it disappears. It's about delivering it in a way that keeps the door open.
One last thought before we move to the word tour. Some of the strongest relationships I have are with people I disagree with regularly, sometimes quite a lot.
That's such an interesting observation. What do you think makes those relationships work despite the disagreement?
I think it's because we both trust that the disagreement comes from a place of genuine care, not a desire to be right or to win. That trust changes everything about how the conversation feels.
That's beautifully put. When someone knows you're disagreeing because you care about the outcome or about them, it lands completely differently than disagreement that feels like an attack.
And that trust doesn't happen automatically. It's built over time by consistently disagreeing with respect again and again, until the other person genuinely believes you're on their side, even when you see things differently. All right, let's do our word tour for today, covering everything we talked about.
Softening openers. I see where you're coming from, but I hear you, and that's a fair point. However, I'm not sure I fully agree.
Stating disagreement clearly, I'd push back on that. I see it differently. From where I'm sitting, in my experience, I want to offer a different perspective.
Receiving disagreement gracefully. That's a good point. Let me think about that. I hadn't thought about it that way. Help me understand. You might be right. I can see the logic in that.
Moving the conversation forward, let's agree to disagree. Let's find some middle ground. What would it take for us to agree on this? Let's circle back to this. We both want the same outcome. We just see different paths there.
And for written disagreement specifically, just to add another perspective, totally hear you on this. And one thing I'd add is, and curious what you think about this angle. Your challenge this week, the next time you disagree with someone, even about something small, try using at least 2 of today's phrases and notice how the conversation feels different.
Disagreement handled well is honestly a skill that improves every relationship in your life, personal and professional both, and it's one that keeps paying off the more you practice it.
It's also worth remembering that you won't get this perfect every time, and that's completely fine. Even just becoming aware of the difference between but and in a tense conversation is real progress.
Small shifts in language really do add up over time. You don't need to transform every conversation overnight. You just need to start noticing the moments where a different word could change the entire tone.
If today's episode gave you a new way to think about disagreement or a phrase you're genuinely excited to try, sharing it with someone would mean a lot to us.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
We'll see you in the next episode. Go disagree with someone kindly today.